Dear friends, dear colleagues, thank you very much for coming to this session, which is called Leaving No One Behind, Mainstreaming Human Rights and Evidence-Based Approach adjustment of internal policy of the law enforcement bodies in order to meet the needs of people who use drugs. In this section, we would like to cover some questions which are kind of the expansion of the topics which have been already discussed here in this conference. We will speak about the activities of the law enforcement structures in the harm reduction areas and the activities of these bodies in maintaining the life of people who use drugs. We will speak about the need of partnership between all parties to the process, and we are speaking not only about the healthcare employees and the NGOs. We are speaking about the officials of the law enforcement bodies and various units of law enforcement bodies in order to show how important is the partnership and understanding of the law enforcement employees in respect of the necessity of such service. We would like to show you some good results of some Eastern European countries. My name is Zhannat Kosmukhamedova. I am working in the UNODC. And at the same time, I work in Kiev, so I am the coordinator of the global focal point of the law enforcement bodies. This session will be co-monitored by Andrei Solodonikov, who is an international expert of UNODC. So he has a very rich working experience, and in our organization, he is responsible for the development of partnership between the civil society and the state bodies. Furthermore, I would like to introduce to you my colleagues, who are the representatives of NGOs and governmental services from Ukraine and Moldova. So let's start with presentation of the experience which has been reached in Ukraine, in the region of Poltava, and their experience will be presented by Roman Drozd, the head of the NGO Light of Hope. Roman has worked within the organization for more than 20 years. He started with implementation of programs, harm reduction programs in Poltava region in Ukraine. Good morning, dear participants. A little bit background of myself. I hope that my colleague from the law enforcement bodies focusing on the fight against narcotics in Ukraine will expand my presentation furthermore. Our organization has been working in the harm reduction programs for more than 15 years. We were involved in rehabilitation of the drug users and also in we were involved in the substitution therapies. We understand that the assistance to people who are using drugs is an important aspect in any city, in any region, and that's why roughly 5 years ago we carried out some research in cooperation with our partners, and we made the inquiry among the citizens of the city, asking them where they see a danger. Most of the respondents said that they are afraid of the drug users, and we understand that trying to get the appropriate healthcare and services to these people to be paid from the state budget is quite difficult, because there is some negative approach of public to these people. So we made the inquiry and we made some estimations, and we found out that in our region roughly 8,000 people using drugs in the injection form, intravenous form. And our programs are covering a little bit more than 4,000 people. The substitution therapy is passed by roughly 910 people. Out of these people, about 240 persons are in prisons at this moment, and about 100 people passes the rehabilitation or remission programs. And we were asking a question to ourselves: where are the other 2,000 drug users who do not have access to the harm reduction programs, to the substitution therapy, and so on? So we tried to find it out with the assistance of the law enforcement bodies in order to produce the strategy to counter the use and spread of psychoactive alternatives, which would compile all aspects. It means the police would approach it from their point of view. We would try to promote the assistance to those who are abusing drugs, and also some other activities in the prevention and so on were planned. So this strategy was adopted in 2020. So today it's the sustainable intervention, which is published from the city budget, not from the donations of donors. And we use the multi-sectoral approach involving the representatives of police, probation, authorities, NGOs, and all that is developed and performed under the support from the city management, municipality. So in the period when this strategy started to work, there have been many other programs involved. For instance, there is the youth program assisting young drug users in the gender programs, some assistance to reaching shelters for the women who use drugs and are then subjected to violence. And also the program for people released from prisons has been also developed in order to provide these people with the possibility of accommodation. So now we are developing the program for combating crime and delinquency prevention this year. This program compiles not only the support to the law enforcement bodies, but also there is the option called the services to drug users based on their socialization. We believe it is an important success and an important step forward, leading to the reduction of the stigmatization level which exists in the society in respect of drug users. Based on the strategic and municipal program, we developed the memorandum on joint activities to combat these issues, and we are coordinating our activities between the police, other law enforcement bodies, NGOs, and other stakeholders. Speaking about the objectives or goals which we've determined for ourselves, the most important is to provide access to the quality public health care and social protection services to people who are using drugs. We would like them to have the same possibility to use all the services on the level which is equal to the access of the other citizens. When we were looking for the partnership with police and other authorities and so on, we understood that for those bodies, the reduction of recidivity has been very important. Because we understand it's as the logic, because in this way we reduce the risk of the crimes committed in association with drugs, and also we are reducing the numbers of people who would be imprisoned then. Coordination and sustainability, it's another focus of our objectives, because sometimes we've focused on some activities financed by the international funds, and with the end of the program, that initiative has been just terminated. So we've made our best to make these initiatives stable and sustainable. What are we doing? We have created the consulting rooms on the basis of the police units and probation units, probation services units, where our psychologists are working. They provide consultancy and they assist a person in solution the problems which the person faces. It means they help such a person to socialize and to reduce the risk. And so they reduce the risk of the criminal activities. We are also testing the diagnostic sets there. Well, the police is against distributing the syringes and needles. So the persons coming to the consultancy receive such kind of a set which contains all these things as well. A very interesting thing is the number of interventions. Daily there are some field interventions performed by police with the assistance of our persons. So these teams are visiting the persons who were released from the jails and are subject to some kind of supervision. So we are supervising people who were released from prisons and they were in prisons because of the crimes related to drugs. Our role is to assure the access of such persons to those services and to those assistances which they need. It means the accommodation, medical care, health care, substitution therapy, education, housing, maybe restoration of his personal ID documents, and so on and so on. There is a very important indicator which we follow monthly. As monthly, we produce the activity reports, and these reports have to contain 3 signatures. The signature of the representative of police, probation services, and our organization. And in the period when these teams have been active, we noticed that the level of recidivity of those people we are working with is has been reduced to the level below 1%, which confirms the fact that finding out the needs of people timely, I mean people using drugs, helping these people to get access to the services and to the assistance they need, we are reducing the level of criminality and the repeated level of repeated crimes in this group of people. Now, we are preparing programs for the next 3 years. We have already presented our proposals, and we believe that the deputies of local council or local parliament will adopt our proposals because they have already proven the benefit they bring. Why I'm presenting it here? Because it is an interesting approach which is performed in cooperation and mutual coordination between the law enforcement bodies, NGOs, various governmental services, and people who use drugs. What is important to be able to apply such interventions in any country or in any region? It's necessary to build up a partnership based on the input moments, or equal input moments and equal goals, and the common focus on people who need to be assisted. It's necessary to build our activities on certain activities. Nevertheless, there have to be certain things changed. When we are approaching the law enforcement bodies, these are the bodies which can change the situation, and all that can be reflected in local policies, local programs, and can then prove the benefit of the continuous financing and sustainable development. Yesterday, it was mentioned here that some transition plans are necessary. And that is important aspect in order to reach the sustainability of the programs which are implemented. That's why we are developing and promoting various kinds of the social involvement, society involvement, in order the governmental bodies delegate some of its powers to the NGOs or some other organizations working with public. Well, we have to admit that not always everything works in the way as we would like to have it. And there is another conclusion coming out of that. It's necessary to be able to improvise and to be flexible. So if the situation changes in our work, it's necessary to be flexible and to be able to develop coalitions in order to change the situation and to reduce, for instance, the spread of HIV or the similar negative effects. And the final conclusion is that we have to realize that the security and safety in the city where we live is our mutual responsibility. Thank you very much. I would like to highlight that you mentioned the core items. And law enforcement bodies are always some kind like the lakmus paper strip, which reflects the policy and attitudes of the governmental bodies. We understand what the harm reduction means for the people using drugs and what the same term means for the law enforcement bodies. And it's necessary to bring this understanding closer to each other. Now I would like to introduce Igor Polishchuk, the head of police department in Poltava region in Ukraine. Igor is the expert in the narcotic related crimes, and also in fighting the organized drug distribution services or groups. So he has a very rich experience in this respect. He works in this area from 2007, so he has 14 years of experience. Igor, the experience of the NGO has been presented here. How you see it as the representative of the law enforcement body?
Hello. Thank you for this opportunity to present our position. First, let me explain what our department does. We are part of the Drug Control Administration of Ukraine. We are in charge of Poltava and Poltava district. We document trafficking, large-scale trafficking. We identify illegal production and distribution of drugs in our municipality, regardless of the method used. So face-to-face dealing, internet, and other. Typically, people of different social status are involved in drug trade, different ages, different social groups. But at the same time, we understand that drug abuse is a disease, and we need to try and treat those people. We understand that. Our service members understand that. And we cooperate with civil society organizations. At the same time, civil society organizations can be different. You can have romance organization, which provides harm reduction services, while other NGOs defend the rights of people who use drugs, and you also have organizations that fight drug trafficking. We understand that we need to work together. So we organize round tables regularly, and there we discuss issues and look for ways forward. So, for example, we represent the law enforcement voice, and civil society organizations share their experience and also international experience. I would also like to say that police force, our department is always open for dialogue. So if we are approached by people who use drugs or NGOs, we're there to talk to them, to sit down and discuss ways of impacting harm reduction and improving the drug scene in our region. Because our main goal is to reduce crime. If we want to make our cities safe, we need to join forces and work together, looking at the problem from different perspectives. We're always ready to innovate, and that is what we're doing. Thank you. Let me now pass the floor to Alexei Grosu, who is Deputy Head of Public Safety of the police force in Moldova. Alexei has a long track record in the police force, and he has a deep understanding of the needs of those who rely on law enforcement, and he does his best to address this situation. Alexei. Hello. Ladies and gentlemen, the Republic of Moldova, just like other post-Soviet states, after the 1990s, suffered changes after we became an independent state. Our laws changed, also our criminal code and the administrative code. Before this transition, we had a criminal code which had been adopted in 1985. So we had stereotypes, and we had this stigma, and the police force was perceived as the extended arm of the state that is there to punish, to deal punishment. So the perception was that police is there to punish all crime. But in 2009, the criminal code of the Republic of Moldova was amended, and these amendments included new definitions of crime. And police, for example, now prosecutes only crimes against public order, safety of citizens, but not things like the construction code, for example, or administrative infractions. Talking about drugs and drug use, illegal drug use, such cases were documented by police. In 2009, after the criminal code was amended, an alternative measure was included in the statute. According to the new language, individuals who surrendered illegal drugs voluntarily and agreed to be referred to counseling could be let go without punishment. So this was a way of influencing the situation. But that was the language of the law. But in practice, we didn't know how to implement it. And then, In 2012, from 2012 to 2015, as a result of numerous discussions with civil society organizations, with UNODC representative in Moldova, it was decided at the highest police level to introduce a methodology, guidelines of participating in the prevention and control of HIV infection. So these guidelines include a list of steps to be taken by police in interaction with this audience. Also, it was mentioned what administrative steps police should take in such interaction. Every police unit must have a toolkit, a list of steps to be taken in such contacts. But even that was not enough, because we now had internal guidelines, we had the law, but it was still theory. The question was how to implement that in practice, and we didn't see any results. At the time, we began training. We have trained so far 600 police officers, and they received both practical training and theoretical training. This guideline even includes a list of organizations that provide referral services. Civil society organizations in Moldova have even designed a mobile app based on these guidelines. It can be used in Moldova capital. All police officers have downloaded this app, and it helps them refer citizens. So the police officer would launch the app and use geolocation to see the nearest service center where they could refer people with an increased risk of HIV infection right there and then. The Republic of Moldova first piloted such apps in 3 regions, in the north, in the center, and in the south of the country. Currently, between July and October, we have referred for examination medical services approximately 63 individuals. 20 of them were women. We're working using this app. And this work is supervised at the highest level of the police force. Right now, we're working on a new guideline to be adopted at the level of the Ministry of the Interior, because you also have the border police, you also have the municipal police, the carabinieri, so all the other forces under the Ministry of the Interior. So the new guidelines will cover interaction with all of them. We work with such organizations when we conduct our operations on site, our field operations. Our civil society partners help us raise awareness, and they also cooperate with us in raising awareness about the harm related to drug use. As of today and in 2021, as part of different projects, the National HIV Program purchased 200 individual kits to protect police officers against HIV infection and other blood-borne diseases. These kits will be distributed to officers who interact with high-risk individuals, so patrol officers, local unit officers, criminal police, and other services. Like I said, we will also issue the new guidelines. And we now have the new national anti-drug strategy for the period of 2021 through 2027. And this strategy requires amendment to existing legislation. For the future, we plan to establish the National Drug Control Administration with administrative liability. We want to also deepen cooperation with the Ministry of Health and our civil society partners. And as usual, like always, it is a matter of money, it is a matter of funding. If funding is restricted, that impacts negatively all our work. Thank you. Thank you, Alexei, for your information, for telling us about Moldova. But I have a question for you. You probably didn't mention communication, how you communicate with civil society organizations. What is their role? And if you have this commission in your country for cooperation, what part do they play? When we met last time, we told you that the government of Moldova has a commission, a special commission, and it includes civil society organizations as well. So as members of this commission, our civil society partners have a voice in designing referral mechanisms. So they have a voting right in this commission, which formulates national strategies. It is a very sustainable, stable system. And when we talk about CEE countries, Central Asia, Moldova, Ukraine, Belarus, this is a very good example of sustainable interaction and cooperation between civil society actors, police force, and the government. Thank you. And now I will invite our online participant from Belarus, from the Positive Movement, an organization which is now implementing a pilot project on alternative prison sentences or those individuals who are prosecuted and are detained and kept in custody. So we're going to be talking about criminal trials in Belarus. Thank you.
So, Irina, can you hear us? Irina? I am sorry, this is Vyacheslav Samarin. Irina has been disconnected. Irina said that there was some presentation which should go on in an automated mode. And I am her colleague, so if there is the necessity to answer anything, I will be ready to do that. So, because of the technical reasons, Irina will not speak by herself in this time, but we have her speech pre-recorded and her presentation as well. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Statkevich Irina. I'm from Belarus, from the city of Minsk, and I would like to present to you our experience in referral of people detained on suspicion of committing crimes in the field of illegal drug trafficking, not related to the purpose of distribution, and also the social, the activities of the NGO called Positive Movement. This is the civil society organization. Our activity is related to the programs of the harm reduction for people who are involved in this. So we have the social center called Crossroad here. This is the place where we implement the programs of referrals. The idea of our center is has appeared when we visited Portugal and when we we had the meeting with some commissions there. So the representatives of our organization and the law enforcement bodies were involved in this visit there. And we decided to strive to implement some of that system in the basis of the Center of Social Assistance in the city of Minsk. So we decided to provide primarily the assistance to drug users in order to develop some prevention activities to prevent those people from committing crimes and getting into prisons. So we have the Center of the Social Assistance, and we have created some multidisciplinary team there, which includes the social workers, sociologic, physician, narcologist or addictologist, and also the employees of the NGOs. So these people, well, we have agreed with all the law enforcement bodies that they will refer all people suspected of committing some crimes to this center. So we had to implement some documents. We had to sign the memorandum of cooperation, but the existing legislation allowed us or provided us for the possibility to implement this algorithm of mutual activities. So the police officers determined that the person would be suitable for our programs and refers the person to us. We are using the special vouchers of a special form where we have the contact data of a specialist and his working hour. So the visiting the center is voluntary because today we do not have any mechanisms which would force the person to participate in this program. However, I would like to say that despite of the fact that it has the voluntary character, there is quite a high percentage of people who turned to us. So the person turns to the social assistance center. He has a special social worker attached to that, and in fact we start to implement this program. In the first visit, the specialists of the center inform the person of the goals and rules of the program. And then we determine individually the services which will be provided to the person based on the whole list or whole scope of the activities which we can provide. Then we start the program. It includes the diagnosis, discussion of the situation of person, identification of motivations, and identification of the situation in respect of the social problems. Maybe there are some problems with the job finding, if some special treatment is requirement. All that is included into the plan which is then compiled. It mandatory contains the consultancy with psychologist, narcologist, and a lawyer, who also, with respect to the individual needs of the person, provide the special service. So we are then assessing the success based on certain parameters which are included into the program. So there is then some kind of the recommendation issued when the person finalizes this course, and this document contains the main conclusions. There are particular recommendations stated, and usually these letters or these recommendation letters are leading to the conclusion that there is the possibility to pass the preventive course with no need to bring the person to the prison. In this way, we have been working for about 2 years. 83 persons were referred to the programs. 90% of them were referred to us by the crime investigators, and the other persons were referred to us based on the advice of the lawyer or alternate law. And despite of the fact that there is no mechanism to force people to participate in this program, there was a great interest in this. All of the participants who passed through this program received the final level, and in majority of the cases, people were not then detained in the prison when they passed our training based on the characteristics which we issue. So this letter, this recommendation or characteristic letter contains the following structure. There is the point 1 is how the person was involved in the program, whether he filled all the parts, how he was involved, and then there are some specifics of the personality described, his special status, and also the possibility of the reasons how to affect or ways how to affect his behavior. It also includes the part which says whether the person needs some psychology assistance or social assistance and so on, or whether the person needs some long-term treatment and rehabilitation and so on. So what conclusions can we come to? Most of the participants of the program were the socialized people of the middle class level. Most of them had the families living in their household, and mostly they were not registered in the list of the problematic persons. So mostly they were detained because of the drug possession for their own use. So these were usually the people who had a certain level of the drug use. However, it does not require the hospitalization. And the use of drug is usually related to some depressions, some negative feelings, lack of the sense of their life. So these were people who could be included into the society, bringing the benefits to the society. And the social workers produce some recommendation in respect of the assistance which the person requires. And we also provide the service of monitoring. We are calling these persons continuously. We are asking them what is their situation, whether the person needs some more intensive psychology support. They continue to visit our center. They are involved in the mutual assistance groups, in fact, communities there. So the participants of the persons involved in the program, the center team, police inspectors, prosecutors, and others are not, in fact, interested not in putting the person to jail, but they are involved they are rather interested in maintaining the person alive and to provide him some assistance to get him out of his risky behavior and to motivate that person to abandon the behavior which could bring them to prison. And in fact, all the parties and especially law enforcement bodies have stated when we made the assessment of the program that this program provides them with the possibility to work with the persons, and this is a very important aspect, and that's why the police officers are sending or referring the persons to our program and are supporting them in this. And further development of our project can be furthermore developed in the discussed in the frame of other rehabilitation programs which we are implementing in our countries. And when the case of the person gets before court, the willingness of person to be involved in this project is then considered by the court, and usually the court decides not about the imprisonment but by other forms of punishment which would allow the people to continue in their strive to cope with the problems they have in their life. Thank you, Irina. It was an excellent presentation. It's a pity that you were not present there online. Unfortunately, in online regime, I believe you will have a chance to be reconnected when there are the questions to you at the end of this session. What is important that it was mentioned here that the trust needs to be there between the law enforcement bodies and the NGOs. And this trust is based on the understanding of the role of each of these components. At this moment, I would like to give the floor to Andrei Saladovnikov, who will present some overview of the activities which we performed in our organization in respect of the harm reduction and the reaction in the HIV persons. So Andrei has produced some overview, and the conclusions and recommendations will be now presented to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for an opportunity to participate in this conference and to share the information that has been created as part of this review. And thank you to UNODC for this opportunity to study and research the situation in this part of Europe. It wasn't an easy task because not always information is publicly open. Sometimes we had to work remotely, and sometimes we had to request information from the countries. In this overview, I tried to identify best practices, their sustainability and effectiveness in cases where law enforcement agencies, together with civil society actors, try to address this topic of saving people's lives. Just briefly, let us look at 3 countries, although I also researched other countries in Central Asia. But I believe that the projects which are being implemented in Belarus, Moldova, and Ukraine have already yielded results. Having listened to the previous speaker, we know that their goal was to minimize repercussions for people who are held liable for possession of small doses, that they would not end up incarcerated. This project is just being developed. It is being offered to state authorities, and we hope that there will be understanding, and we hope that this process will continue to develop and bring about amendments to legislation, which I will talk about later. Moldova has an amazing sustainable experience of interaction between civil society actors and state authorities. They come together to address issues and do it effectively, helping people who use drugs. The experience of Ukraine is Poltava experience, although I believe that there are other organizations involved in other regions of Ukraine, but this experience is unique because it is a long-term experience. They received support and funding from the local administration, and this is what guarantees their sustainability and delivers results. Law enforcement agencies are actively involved, and this communication, this confident communication between law enforcement agencies and civil society actors discussing these issues together helps address the issues related to health, housing, and recovery of a normal life. Having looked at these examples, we could make several conclusions in identifying what is an obstacle to sustainability. First of all, recommendations were created specifically for local authorities. Yes, it is clear that the issue should be addressed at the national level, but the experience of Ukraine shows that it is much more effective and efficient to work with the local level. The authorities must understand that any civil society organization needs support, and if they receive support from the administration, their work will be much more efficient and effective. Meetings and communication play an important part. In many cases, state authorities do not know what civil society organizations work on. So regular meetings, like this commission that Moldova established, where they meet regularly, where civil society actors have a voice, where they are heard, delivers results. Of course, there are also questions connected to civil society organizations. Yes, some of those organizations, and that's what I saw. Maybe it is not valid universally, but I saw that some of them do not deliver on communication. Maybe they do not entirely use modern means of communication. They don't provide enough information. It is very important that international organizations provide constant support to civil society organizations, support such regular meetings with public administration, where they could present proposals about their own work, but also maybe give information to the law enforcement agencies where they could focus their work. In any case, experience shows and analysis shows that the cornerstone is legislation. If the state understands the problem, if it adopts better legislation, if legislators understand the needs of society, the results will be better. And the issues that we're discussing here will be addressed much more efficiently and quicker. I placed a lot of emphasis on the work of law enforcement agencies, and examples show that in many cases, law enforcement lacks full understanding of the problem we are discussing here. To make it more clear, to make it more efficient for the law enforcement, you need to provide them with more information. You need to explain best practices. This should be integrated in their training programs, that law enforcement officers understand what are the needs of people who use drugs, what harm reduction is about. When their mindset is created, it should be shaped not as a punitive authority, but as an authority that can help. This is a precondition for sustainable cooperation. In 2021, we organized several workshops in Ukraine, in Kharkiv University, And we had an opportunity to talk to law enforcement officers. And we saw that cooperation can be born when we're ready to listen to each other. And the more often law enforcement authorities talk to civil society actors who understand the issue, the deeper understanding they will get. But they also need some internal guidelines because they are there to protect and defend the law. They follow the law. They need guidelines. And these examples of Moldova and Ukraine that were presented here today show us that these countries have guidelines which help officers make proper decisions regarding individuals who were identified being in possession of small amounts of drugs. The final decision is made, of course, by the judiciary, so courts should also have an understanding of society and conditions under which law enforcement authorities work. So when you discuss all these issues, you understand that problems can be solved only when there is good working cooperation. And for that, you need money. That creates stability in addressing issues. So let me conclude by putting very clearly, where I talked to law enforcement officers and understood in what conditions they work, believe me, their goal is not to make people pay. Their goal is to ensure that laws are respected and that society is safe and healthy. And they're ready to listen to you and listen to your proposals in solving problems of society today. Thank you, and I'm happy to take questions. Thank you, Andrei. I think you made a wonderful conclusion and summarized the examples that were presented here. So we actually have a few minutes for questions, and it would be great to hear what you think. Thank you. My name is Alexei, Ukraine. I come from an association of people who use drugs, Volna, in Ukraine. It is a national association. These were very interesting examples, but I do have questions. Recently, I participated in a survey which was conducted in Ukraine, and results of that survey were presented. And over 2 years, convictions of people who use drugs were calculated and counted, and 38% of them were related to cannabis, which, for example, is not a crime in the Czech Republic. So, in fact, it is the policy in our country that creates criminals. I understand that law enforcement authorities work within the law. They follow instructions, they follow the law, they have a clear structure, they follow orders. But we are fighting the consequences of punitive drug policy. Yes, we need all those services, but we also need to engage community in formulating national policies. At the national, not only at the local level, these policies need to be changed because as a result of criminalization, a lot of money is spent on the punitive machinery, keeping inmates incarcerated costs a lot of money. These people are out of the workforce, their families suffer. So I think that in our country, we had a law enforcement reform, but it was done only halfway, because our law enforcement agencies are deemed effective when they catch perpetrators, when they can show high numbers of perpetrators. That is what their bonuses are based on. And when they cannot show the numbers, they're forced to provoke such reaction. My question, did you participate in formulating the national strategy in Ukraine? Because it has been already published for 2021 to 2030. We participated in it, but it hasn't been adopted yet. Okay, and let me just refer your question to the expert.
Alexei, thank you for your question. It's really the painful issue. Yeah, I've heard that there is the systemic word mentioned in the law enforcement sphere. Results, that's the main word. But law enforcement bodies are not speaking about the results in other way. So in the countries where I visited and studied the work of the law enforcement bodies, I tried to understand how it's organized and assessed in Lithuania, Latvia, Czech Republic, and some other countries. Well, now we have dedicated few days studying the situation in the Czech Republic. For the drugs, you will be punished. You will be punished. If I hand over some drugs to you, I will be punished. But even if it concerns the really small volumes. But studying the efficiency of the law enforcement body assessment. Yeah, there is certain stereotype existing. These are the residues of the Soviet Union system. But I have to say that the structure and system is changing in Ukraine. For instance, the detection of laboratories, the distribution channels, and the big volumes are the criteria based on which the work of the professional work of law enforcement bodies is based. Well, to say that the law enforcement officers are in fact oriented to show as most examples of the minor drug dealers and users mentioned. So now the new strategy has been developed, and all these things will be there. Considered. Thank you, Andrei, for your presentation, the last one. I would like to mention that my colleagues from Moldova seem to be modest, but as it was mentioned here that there have to be the mutual meetings of the law enforcement bodies and the NGOs and so on. I fully support this idea, and we are organizing such meetings in our country. But I would like to highlight that some moments in respect of the healthcare have been problematic. We are facing certain kinds of barriers, but there are no barriers when we are speaking about these issues in respect of the policies, and when we are producing some new legislation and we are now, in fact, solving the issues when the persons are brought to liability, just handing their own small volumes, and then they are in prisons face the big dealers. So I don't know what's the situation in your country and in Belarus, but in our country, the greater number of people is imprisoned for marijuana, cannabis. Roughly 85% are there because of that. And when we asked what is the volume for which the users are getting to the prison, and we found out that usually they were imprisoned for the volume between 2 and 10 grams. And the question is that really the narco trafficking? Well, are those people really those who are organizing the big volume sales, so on? If there is no lab found and anything like that, just the person was detained with this small volume of drug in his hands. So we are now drafting the bill which would cover the threshold volumes, or which would determine the threshold volumes. You know, we really believe that people should not be imprisoned for keeping or holding the narcotics for their own use in not big volumes. You know, we understand that there has to be the fact of enrichment proved. You know, the fact that you have the narcotics at yours does not mean that you were distributing it or you were making some fortune out of it. But I believe that, namely, the intention to distribute should be the thing which has to be the core one. Thank you, Vitaly, for your speech. Well, my name is Rian Zurkan. I am the representative of the department, anti-drug department of the Moldovan government. So our commission, as has been already mentioned here, includes also the NGOs who have also the right of vote there. And they can inform us of the problems which they are facing in their activities, which the drug users are facing. As regards this punitive systems and the crimes or articles based on which the people are imprisoned because of the possession of drugs. Since 2005, when we were investigating and making some research regarding the volumes for which the people were imprisoned. Since the time, the statistics have changed quite a lot. If in 2015 we had roughly 1,600 crimes, and out of them 80% was for handling, And since that time, the last year there was 55% were for distribution. And the courts, when they decide about imprisonment, are also following a different rules. So if you exceed the limit, just a few grams, the judges usually determine the punishment in the form of penalties or some works for the benefit of society. So for small volumes, people are not brought to prison anymore. Thank you. Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Furthermore. So it seems there are no questions. The number of participants in this section has increased, which increases our hope that there are the people who understand that the partnership between civil society and law enforcement bodies. You know, sometimes the civil society has the feeling that law enforcement bodies are the cause of the problems and not that there should be the instrument. So as the number of our participants has increased, I hope that you are sharing our opinion that the cooperation with law enforcement bodies is necessary because they can assist us in the preventive measures and also in the access to the remedial measures. I would like to thank you for your participation. I would like to repeat that these programs have the perspective to be expanded to other countries as well. And that's why I would like to highlight and to state that UNCHR will continue to develop the coordination and cooperation with other countries. We will establish the global focal point where any representatives of any country can be involved. We will develop some working plans, some action plans, which will focus on partnership capacity building. And I believe that in the final result, we will reach the situation when the legislation related to illegal drugs and the access to the harm reduction programs will be for the benefit of our partners and our societies. I'd like to thank you for excellent session. I would like to repeat our offer, which has been mentioned already in the first day of our meetings. I believe that the representatives of NGOs will support me. So I propose that the representatives of prosecuting offices and judiciary should be also invited to such conferences as this one, because sometimes we hear that police does not do this and the police does not do that, but sometimes people forget that it's not us who takes the decision concerning the follow-up steps, punishment and so on. So that's why I would really appreciate if there are the representatives of other judiciary authorities involved. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I would like also to expand the words of thanks for the possibility to make the presentation here, to share opinions and results of our researches and reviews. But believe me that the law enforcement bodies are really interested in solving all these issues, and they are ready and open to cooperation. I would like also to thank all the participants and organizers of this meeting. I really believe that it's very useful if the law enforcement representatives are involved in such meetings. This is the big achievement which has been already reached, and that's why I declare that we will support and promote organization of all such meetings where all possible actors in this sphere would be involved. Thank you very much. Спасибо.